holding and obviously an immobile victim. Okay, this is very similar to what you guys are going to have set up when you get it up and running. And we'll see something like this later this morning, actually, too.
Is that cold water or warm water you're putting on?
That's a very good question. In the field, more than likely it's going to be cold water. The fire department's going to have cold water. Here, and Randy and I have talked about this a little bit, you actually have a hot water hookup in the ambulance shed, so they will be able to use warm water there, which the patients will thank you for immensely. So, when we set up our technical decon, especially in January, when we set up our technical decon in the field, we use water supply from the fire departments because we don't bring water. It's one thing we don't bring. We also have water heaters, so we can set up hot water for ourselves too. So that's a good question. That's a very good question. I hope your hot water heater is full when we get going. So we don't want to have Randy get cold while we're closing them off. The other Randy. Notice I said. But then, like I said, this is going to be something similar. You guys actually had the advantage. You have two different types, and we'll go over them later. We have two different ways of deconning personnel when they come in, any victims like that. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. This is one of them. So, actually, you guys are, other than maybe the colors, this is almost exactly what's going to look like when you guys set it up. The shower might be a little different, but pretty much in a nutshell, that's it. Am I right? You guys have seen it before?
Yeah. We have a cover we can put over it.
You have what? A cover over the shower?
We can put it over it.
Okay. And that's good because then that'll help contain a lot of the overspray too, because then, like this guy's probably getting mist on his glasses right now. And if that's contaminated, then technically he's got secondary contamination. It's kind of a stretch, but it could happen. Especially if there's a breeze or some kind of ventilation blowing through there. So, as far as selecting CPC, chemical protective clothing, other terms we use are PPE, personal protective equipment. As far as some of the questions that we use and that you guys can use when somebody's coming in that's contaminated, how do we know which levels to choose? Because you've got this equipment, but that doesn't necessarily mean you may use every bit of it every time somebody comes in that may be contaminated. Okay, you can use bits and pieces, so to speak. Okay, this is just some of the stuff that should go through your minds when you know you've got somebody coming in. As far as what level should we dress out to? What level of clothing do we need to get into? Obviously what the product is and how much of it is there, or how much of it is on the person. Is it a liquid and they stepped in it, or is it a gas that they were fully engulfed in? Okay. What can it do? What are the medical issues that we have to worry about for harm? Not only the victim, but yourselves as well. Because there are some products, anhydrous ammonia and usually any other vapors like that, if it gets into their clothing, they could off-gas some of that as they come in. Okay? And now you're being exposed to it as well. Okay. What can we do about it? What different layers do we have? What do we have to choose from? If it's something that's, excuse me, really bad, put everything on. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe you have to add some, think outside. I hate that phrase, but think outside the box a little bit. Use your imagination. Add some stuff to it that you may have here. Maybe put on a couple other layers of scrubs or surgical stuff or something like that underneath this stuff. Another layer of protection for you guys. Okay. And maybe
what's the number one contaminant you guys have to deal with?
In our territory, the product we have, I don't want to say problems with, the problem we get, the product we get a lot of calls on is probably anhydrous ammonia. So, and the one good thing about anhydrous, well, I don't know if there's anything good about anhydrous, but one of the advantages to it being is it can be a liquid if it's pressurized, but once it gets out of the container, it's a gas, it's a vapor. So most of the time, if you're outside, it's just going to get the environment and dissipate. If you get any on you, it doesn't really stay on you very long unless you breathe a lot of it in. It's very highly, attracted to water. So usually water and ammonia, That's why if there's a leaky valve, the fire departments are trained to get a couple hose lines, put them on a fog pattern, and basically use that as a shield as they go in to try to turn the valve off, because that's gonna knock down most, if not all, the vapors, because they're so highly water attractive. That's why if you've noticed,